I'm glad everyone is here today, and we will start off with roll call for attendance.
Chairwoman Sosnowski.
Here.
Senator Picard.
Here.
Senator Mack.
Present.
Senator Anderson.
Here.
Senator Coleman.
Here.
Senator Lombardo.
Here.
Senator Mendes.
Here.
Whip De La Cruz.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. We have 3 items before the committee today. We are going to go out of order. Senator Pearson has informed me that he is at a meeting, and so he has advised me to take up the other legislation first. And I see that we do have the sponsor of 2 bills that are before us today. Senator DiPalma is with us. Senator DiPalma, would you endeavor to explain your Bill 340, please?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. This is the, I believe, the 3rd year we've had this bill. And what this bill seeks to do, very simply, and let me tell you about why it's important. We're all familiar probably with what's transpired or we've seen in national news in a very remarkable fashion where family have had children's video cameras, video monitor cameras. In fact, I have one behind me right now for my grandchildren, connected to the internet in the house, the Wi-Fi. And what happened with this one family, someone actually tapped into their Wi-Fi system, into their camera while the child was in their room. Wasn't a baby, but a child of 5 or 6 years old, and started talking to the child in the room. I think they knew somebody was in the room because I was able to hear the sound. Imagine that happened to any of us, any of our children, any people we know, grandchildren, or whatever. And the reason that came about, one of the reasons that came about, set aside the Wi-Fi information being available, which is an issue I address every year from a cyber hygiene event. But it goes back to the device itself. So the legislation you have before you, Madam Chair and Committee, is patterned and modeled after that which passed in California in 2019. And you might imagine if it could pass in California, given the number of manufacturers and designers of internet accessible products, we should be able to get it over the goal line in Rhode Island. And what it seeks to do in its very nature, and it doesn't address anything from a HIPAA perspective, private information, personal identifiable information. You'll see that as the last section in the proposed legislation. If you look at which is the second page is really the critical piece there. And what it basically says that if a device has the ability with regards to having a password or access appropriate to that device, that the pre-programmed password for that device would be unique. So we say, how do you do that? Well, it's pretty easy to do a unique, it's not random, unique password such that it's not, what's the password? Password. What's the username? Username. So it would not have username as username, it would not have password as password. It would ensure that it has a unique name. And so if I bought this baby monitor, child monitor that I have here, it would have a different password than if Senator De La Cruz bought one. It also would have the security feature that would allow the user to change it. So if they wanted to change it, they could. But at its core, what it seeks to do, this legislation, is manufacturers of any devices in Rhode Island, sale of those devices, would be required that those devices have a pre-programmed unique password into it and the ability to change it. That's all it does, nothing more than that. And that's what obviously there's a lot of definitions that are included here. And as I indicated before, talks about what it's not applicable to, and clearly at the very end, things associated with HIPAA or other things that are related are not applicable by this. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you, and I thank the committee's time.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator DiPalma. Before we go to the witnesses, are there any questions or comments from committee members? Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the sponsor. So the way I'm understanding this is that anything that is it anything that was built in Rhode Island or sold in Rhode Island would be subject to this?
A manufacturer of a connected device in Rhode Island. Yeah. And like I said, you might imagine, given the number of, I was going to say high-tech companies, but things that are connected to the internet don't have to be necessarily high-tech. We could put there are coffee mugs that have Wi-Fi things connected to them to address temperature or sensors in there. So if somebody believes a coffee mug's high-tech, well, okay, maybe it's a high-tech mug, the company or a cup. The company doesn't necessarily have to be high-tech. So.
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
And how many companies exist in the state that are making something that would baby monitor or whatever else that would be subject to this?
More than last year. I don't know. I think that when this first was introduced, I don't know what the number was 2 years ago. And it's a situation with regards to if it's going to be connected to a network, it's going to have a device, it's going to have a password associated. It should have the ability to change it. So, but my background in this area, if somebody would allow me to write the software for them, I would do that in I don't want to say a few minutes because it's been a while, but it's not a big deal to be able to do this. And once they've done it for one, you do it. It's the same thing you use for all.
Thank you, Senator DiPalma. Any further questions? Okay. We do have some witnesses signed up to testify on the bill. John Keane. Welcome, John.
Yes.
Welcome to Senate Commerce. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chair Sosnowski and members of the committee. My name is John Keane. I'm with the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers, also known as AHAM. AHAM members support the objectives of reasonable cybersecurity legislation and encompasses all household connected devices. It does not constrain innovation or limit consumer choice. Connected devices are also so varied, developing so quickly, that it is crucial to define Internet of Things. In 2020, President Trump signed the IoT Cybersecurity Act of 2020. We ask that this bill include the federal definition of IoT device to ensure manufacturers are aware of what connected devices are included and maintain accordance with federal law. Secondly, because connected devices are varied and developing so quickly, we believe that equipping an IoT device with a means to protect should include a security framework that is recognized by national and international safety and security institutions. We are not asking the committee to remove the other security features that are in the bill, but we ask that the bill language be amended to include a security framework that is both robust and flexible. AHAM has drafted model legislative text and a written statement that you should all have been provided. This change would help ensure that cybersecurity protections keep pace both with innovation and state-of-the-art in cybersecurity as they evolve to adjust new devices and security measures. With that, I strongly urge you, if the committee would move forward with this bill, the bill should reflect the importance of improved cybersecurity standards, which are found in our model language. With that, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, John. Are there any questions from the committee for Mr. Keane? There are none. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The next person who is signed up is Lisa McCabe. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lisa McCabe, and I'm here on behalf of CTIA, the Trade Association for the Wireless Communications Industry, in opposition to Senate Bill 340. This bill is unnecessary as the wireless industry introduced its CTIA Internet of Things Cybersecurity Certification Program in 2018. This program protects consumers and wireless infrastructure nationally while also creating a secure foundation for smart cities, connected cars, mobile health, and other IoT applications. Leading wireless providers, technology companies, security experts, and test labs collaborated to develop the program. And the program builds upon IoT security recommendations from the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, the Internet Engineering Task Force, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. The program accepts all IoT devices that connect using Wi-Fi or a cellular network and validates whether or not they meet a set of security features. Device manufacturers may seek one of 3 levels of certification depending on the sophistication of the device and the security characteristics desired or needed for its use. This type of industry program is preferred to legislative mandates, such as SB 340, as they provide the industry the flexibility to quickly respond to changes on the cybersecurity front. And this flexibility is vitally important to address any security concerns that arise in such a quickly changing field. For these reasons, CTIA respectfully asks that you not move SB 340. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee for this witness? There are none. Thank you very much for your testimony. And that concludes the witness list on Senate Bill S340. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to hold for further study. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Senator De La Cruz, seconded by Senator Coleman and Senator Picard. Could the clerk call the roll, please?
Chairwoman Sosnowski.
Yes.
Senator Picard.
Yes.
Senator Mack.
Yes.
Senator Anderson.
Yes.
Senator Coleman.
Yes.
Senator Lombardo.
Yes.
Senator Mendes.
Yes.
Whip De La Cruz.
Yes.
Bill is held, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. The bill will be held. Senator DiPalma, you do have another piece of legislation before us today, 342. Would you endeavor to explain your legislation?
I do, Madam Chair, and I want to thank this committee for having passed this bill. I'll lose track, I don't know how many times, 3 or 4, not 5 times. But this bill codifies, in fact, the language in the bill here is the language that Governor Raimondo, the previous governor, used back in 2017 maybe, or 2016, I forgot when it was. I know it was 2017 when the change was made regarding net neutrality. So the language in the bill here that you have before you seeks to ensure the internet service neutrality is in fact put in place. And what I call your attention to, and I'm not going to go through the details for it, but we all want a safe and open internet. And if you look at, you don't have to go there now, but if you look at page 2, pretty much lines 25 through 33, items 1, 2, 3, and 4, those are the exact same components in the executive order. If you like, Madam Chair, I can get you the executive order that Governor Raimondo put in place in the 2017 timeframe. So I think this is the 5th year for the bill. So what this seeks to do is, in fact, memorialize exactly what Governor Raimondo had put in place and reinstate net neutrality. For the, Madam Chair, for your and the committee benefit, just saw an article recently in the New York Times that a federal judge had cleared the way for California to enforce. Guess what? It's net neutrality law that they had put in place. They actually have the law in place. They went beyond where we did from a executive order perspective. Now, let me just, if I may, read. I had several notes that would have taken me minutes to complete. I'm going to read this, and I'll take 30 seconds and tell you exactly what this does for those that are unfamiliar with it. Net neutrality is the notion that all internet content should be accessible to consumers, and that broadband providers cannot block or degrade content, particularly sites and services that compete against their own services. Plain and simple. That's what this bill seeks to do. That's what items 1, 2, 3, 4 do on those lines I previously mentioned. And Madam Chair, I do thank this committee for having passed this, I don't know how many times in the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Palmer. Are there any questions from committee members for Senator Palmer before we go to the witnesses? There are none. Okay, I guess we will begin the witness list. It looks like the first person is Gregory Waxmolsky. Welcome.
Thank you so very much for having me in today.
Thank you.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Welcome.
Thank you. There's a little bit of feedback on my end, so I'm going to turn my microphone down just a little bit. Today in this committee, we're hearing on Senate Bill 342, among others. This is what's commonly known as net neutrality. I just really want to extend my thanks not just to the chair and all the members of this committee, but especially to the senators who have introduced and co-sponsored this bill. Some people really get it. We need to come into the 21st century as a nation when it comes to the provision, the implementation, and the protection of information. Now, I'm a librarian, and I'll tell you that running water and heat in the winter is just as important as protecting the flow of information to all people, especially as we embark on the next steps in the 21st century. Chapter 3919 is going to lead the nation when we accept that broadband internet access has to include fair provision and upheld the principle that is going to keep our internet open for all people. And that means anybody in the state of Rhode Island. I think if you go and look at the Electronic Frontier Foundation issue pages on net neutrality, you'll see absolutely everything that you need to. I don't need to waste any more of your time tonight. I just really want to applaud the senators who are getting behind this now to lead the country and to make sure that our general laws protect everybody's access to information. Thanks so much for your service to the state.
Oh, thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness from the committee members? There are none. Thanks again for calling in.
You're great. Thank you.
The next witness who will be calling in is Russell Hanser. Welcome to the Senate Commerce Committee. Russell?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Russ Hanser. I'm a partner at Wilkerson, Barker & Nauer, where I practice communications and technology law. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today on behalf of Cox Communications. So, as Senator DiPalma said, everyone agrees that it's important to protect internet openness. But the bill before you is neither legally permissible nor an effective way to achieve this goal. I provided detailed written testimony, but here I will just touch on my 4 main points. First, this bill is unnecessary. Cox and other ISPs have made legally enforceable public commitments not to block, throttle, or discriminate against any lawful internet content or device, that is, prioritizing or deprioritizing for money, for unfair reasons, etc. These commitments are enforceable today, both by the Federal Trade Commission and by the Rhode Island Attorney General. ISPs also remain subject to the FCC's transparency rule. That rule requires them to provide detailed information to consumers regarding their services and their network practices. If they don't do that, or if they break their promises, they are again subject to enforcement action by the FTC or by state authorities. And even apart from such enforcement, blocking and throttling or discriminating against lawful traffic would harm broadband providers themselves because they can only succeed by winning and maintaining consumers' trust in long-term business. Second, the FCC's 2015 framework, which this bill seeks to revive, harmed consumers. The biggest distinction between what ISPs have committed to doing and what the FCC required in 2015 is that in addition to rules banning, blocking, throttling, and pay prioritization, the FCC imposed a vague set of common carrier requirements, including what was known as the General Conduct Rule. Under that rule, the FCC at any time could have found that any ISP practice was unlawful, even years after the practice had been initiated. S342 would reimpose that open-ended requirement. That would be a problem because we now know that the uncertainty caused by the FCC's approach led to substantial reductions in broadband investment while its order was in effect. Between 2015 and 2017, new wireline broadband deployments declined by 55%, and wireless broadband deployments fell by 83% compared to the 2 previous years. Rhode Island should not repeat the mistakes the FCC made in 2015. Third, this bill is preempted by federal law. Under Democrats and Republicans alike, the FCC has repeatedly found that the Internet is quintessentially interstate in nature, and that federal law prohibits state and local net neutrality laws. The FCC 2015 order, adopted under President Obama's second FCC chairman, prohibited states from adopting requirements that departed from or supplemented federal law, and the FCC's more recent order reached the same conclusion. The D.C. Circuit, in its decision generally upholding the more recent FCC decision, found that the FCC could not issue a blanket preemption barring all state laws, but the court reaffirmed that state laws are preempted when they conflict with or undermine federal policy. The bill before you, which seeks to revive the very same regime that the FCC rejected in 2017 and 2018, is clearly in conflict with federal policy and is therefore preempted. Further, the bill is not saved by the fact that it only, in quotes, prohibits the state from purchasing broadband services from non-compliant ISPs rather than imposing net neutrality regulation outright. The Supreme Court has held that states cannot regulate indirectly what they are preempted from regulating directly. The Supreme Court has also held that when a contracting limitation imposes requirements that apply to all of a provider's contracts rather than only the ones with the state, it is acting as a regulator, not as a purchaser. In those circumstances, contracting requirements that undermine federal policy, like those in this bill, are preempted. Fourth and finally, federal legislation is the best path forward here. While Cox supports the FCC's 2018 decision, we have seen a ping-pong cycle in which the framework for broadband regulation changes every time the White House and FCC change hands, and that cycle seems likely to continue. The Internet is too valuable to consumers and to businesses to be subject to the shifting political winds that come each time the White House changes hands. For this reason, Cox and other ISPs support bipartisan federal legislation that will permanently preserve and solidify net neutrality protections for consumers while providing regulatory certainty and preserving ISPs' investment incentives and flexibility to innovate. We urge you to join Cox and other ISPs in calling for balanced federal legislation of this sort. Thank you very much for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there questions from the committee members? There is none. We appreciate you weighing in on this issue and with your points that you made about the federal government and the Supreme Court upholding federal law. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 more witnesses signed up on this bill. We have Jerry Keegan. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Jerry Keegan with CTIA, the Trade Association for the Wireless Communications Industry, in opposition to Senate Bill 342. The wireless industry supports an open and free Internet. To further that goal, CTIA and its member companies support a bipartisan federal legislative solution to enshrine open Internet principles and deal with this issue once and for all. We oppose, however, state legislation like Senate Bill 342 on net neutrality, as it is unnecessary because strong consumer protections are in place today. The Federal Trade Commission has ample authority to police broadband providers and their offerings and to take action against any provider whose actions are deceptive or unfair or whose practices are anti-competitive. In addition, the U.S. Department of Justice can prosecute providers who try to adopt anti-competitive network management practices. Finally, the state attorney general may enforce state consumer protection laws of general applicability against any provider the AG thinks is acting in an anti-competitive manner, violating its terms of service, or not abiding by its agreements. State-by-state regulation of mobile broadband services raises the prospect that different laws will apply as the user moves between state lines. These problems multiply in the case of mobile broadband. Mobile broadband subject to the laws where users purchase their service where they are presently located, or even where the antenna transmitting the signal is located. A patchwork of state laws is untenable. As the Federal Communications Commission will likely take action on this issue in the near term, we'd ask that Rhode Island not fragment the regulatory framework for broadband providers by passing this bill. On the California case referenced by Senator DiPalma, CTIA has appealed that ruling to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We respectfully request that you not move this bill. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I have a question about the, you mentioned that the Federal Communications is, you think that they will be taking this up shortly. Do you have any idea of a date or any conversations that are going on to give you the idea that this will be happening soon, federally?
Madam Chair, this is high on the FCC's list of actions to do. Currently, the FCC is not fully constituted. There are thoughts that the FCC will be fully constituted within the next few months, and we believe that this will be one of the first item actions taken up by the FCC when it is fully constituted.
Okay. And obviously, the reason it's not fully constituted is because of the change in administration?
That's correct. The president has an opportunity to choose one commissioner at the FCC, and we are awaiting that nomination.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions from the committee? There are none. Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate the information.
Thank you, Chair.
Just a moment. I think there is a question, if you haven't left yet.
I'm still here.
Okay. Who had a question?
Thank you so much, Chairman Sosnowski. So, with government, I think we all can agree that government runs pretty slow, and it does take sometimes years for things to pass. So, although I do believe very much so that this is a high priority, I wonder if there's a solution in passing something as a state, but then repealing it once something has been solidified at the federal level.
Senator, we do not see the need for an interim legislation. We believe that, as the sponsor has noted, this legislation has now, I believe, been introduced over 4 sessions. It has yet to be enacted. The governor did have an executive order similar to this on the books. There is plenty of consumer protections already in place over the interim that can fix any problems that may arise, whether it is the new Federal Trade Commission bringing actions against providers that it thinks are acting anti-competitively, whether it's the new Department of Justice bringing actions against any provider acting anti-competitively, whether it's the current FCC bringing any actions against any provider that may be violating its transparency rules. There are plenty of consumer protections currently in place to protect consumers if you feel providers may break their net neutrality promises. So that's why we do not think that state legislation is needed in this space.
All set, Senator De La Cruz? Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions from committee members? There are none. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like the next witness is Tim Wilkerson. Tim, welcome to the committee.
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Sosnowski and esteemed members of the committee. My name is Tim Wilkerson, and I am president of the New England Cable and Telecommunications Association, or NECTA. In Rhode Island, NECTA represents Cox Communications. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on behalf of ISPs, internet service providers, and their long-standing commitment to net neutrality principles ensuring an open internet, and to call for congressional action to codify these protections at a national level under a clear, modern, and enduring law. With a democratically controlled Congress and soon Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, it is likely that federal policy reestablishes net neutrality as the law of the land. To be clear, NECTA members have not, do not, and will not block, throttle, or otherwise interfere with the lawful online activity of our customers, and have consistently reaffirmed these commitments since the FCC first articulated open internet principles in 2005. It is important to underscore that these commitments are more than a mere pledge. They are part of our company's operating DNA. In the 4 years since state policymakers attempted to mandate ISP compliance with quote unquote net neutrality principles through the passage of state laws or executive orders, no cable broadband provider has violated these important consumer-focused principles. In Rhode Island, similar efforts have been attempted by advocates warning of the potential threats to the consumer experience. Despite these warnings, no NECTA member or other major ISP has broken any existing or federal law by violating net neutrality tenets and upending the user experience. It is quite the opposite. During the past 4 years and for decades before, our members have invested billions of dollars into their broadband networks to ensure they exceed ever-expanding consumer demand. What would happen if an ISP violated net neutrality principles? Today, the Rhode Island Attorney General, the Federal Trade Commission, the FCC, and the United States Justice Department have well-established authority to investigate and bring enforcement actions against any ISP who blocked, throttled, or interfered with the lawful online activity of their customers. The federal courts have made clear that although the FCC could not preempt all state laws in advance on a blanket basis, a specific state net neutrality law will be invalidated under the conflict preemption doctrine if it is inconsistent with the FCC's light touch framework. In particular, the D.C. Circuit reaffirmed the well-established principle that if a state, quote, stands as an obstacle to the accomplishment, execution of the full purposes and objectives, end quote, of Congress or the FCC, then it will be struck down pursuant to the Supremacy Clause. Federal courts have also found that states may not directly or indirectly circumvent preemption by using their spending powers to regulate broadband service. This is precisely what the bill before us intended to do. The Supreme Court has clearly ruled that a state may not use the spending power as a means to regulate indirectly what is preempted to regulate directly. Under the market participant doctrine, the Supreme Court has found that a state may not impose conditions on the procurement of products and services for its own use where conditions extend to the consumer services as well. As the court explained, such procurement conditions are, for practical purposes, equivalent to state regulation and thus are subject to preemption. Without congressional action, net neutrality will continue to be a political football that diverts time and resources away from innovation and job creation. By permanently rejecting outdated 1930s-style regulations and adopting a modern federal framework, Congress would achieve the right balance of government oversight of ISPs while fostering private investment and market competition. Historically, Rhode Island has adopted a light-touch, modern regulatory regime over the communications marketplace that spurred industry competition, leading to a convergence of residential and business consumer video, broadband, voice, and wireless offerings from new service providers at lower costs. As a result of this approach, the network quality and diversity of products offered by companies in Rhode Island is virtually unparalleled. Today, our members strongly support and adhere to the principles of no blocking, throttling, or discriminating against the consumer experience. Rigorous existing federal and state oversight of ISPs protect consumers. That's why we would ask that you not support this legislation and allow the democratically controlled Congress and FCC act in this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there questions from committee members? I don't see any hands. Thank you again for your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very much appreciated. That does conclude our witness list on this bill. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to hold because we are still receiving more information on this legislation. Is there such a motion? to hold?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, I see, I hear Senator Picard makes a motion, seconded by Senator Lombardo, Senator Coleman, Senator Anderson. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Chairwoman Sosnowski.
Yes.
Senator Picard.
Yes.
Senator Mack.
Yes.
Senator Anderson.
Yes.
Senator Coleman.
Yes.
Senator Lombardo.
Yes.
Senator Mendes.
No.
Whip Dela Cruz.
Yes.
Bill is held, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. The bill will be held.
Madam Chair, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Senator DiPalma, for your hard work on
Have a
this.
good day. Thank you, committee.
The next bill before us is Senator Pearson's bill, Senate Bill 280. I don't believe Senator Pearson can join us right now. He did inform me, as I shared with the committee, that he is in a meeting. I will give a brief explanation on the bill, and then we will proceed with the witnesses. This bill changes the tax classification of cable television equipment while also adding more specificity. Presently, all Class 2 or Class 3. The bill lists additional specific equipment in Class 1 and changes the classification of an item at which could change the tax amount charged. And we do have several witnesses, and I think we're ready to go. The first witness is Thomas Keane. Welcome, Mr. Keane.
Yes.
Welcome to the Senate Commerce. We're ready for your testimony.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and members of the committee for the opportunity to provide testimony today in opposition to Senate Bill 280. Just to quickly introduce myself, I am the Director of Taxation for the town of North Providence. I'm also the Chairman of the Rhode Island Association of Assessing Officers Personal Property Committee. I've been the chair of that committee for the last 10 years, and I'm also a former member of the Cumberland Town Council. Today I'm providing testimony on behalf of the town of North Providence and the Rhode Island Association of Assessing Officers. And before I get started, I just wanted to say, in addition, my mayor in North Providence, Mayor Charles Lombardi, wanted me to make clear that in his capacity as mayor and as president of the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, he strongly opposes Senator Pearson's Bill 280. So to start, the revisions that are being proposed in the tax classification for cable television assets in this bill need to, the first thing I want to make clear is that set-top boxes are not computers. I'm sure you'll hear testimony, and testimony will be provided that set-top boxes, feature many components that can be found in computers. However, a set-top box that provides cable television in your home is not a computer. My refrigerator that I have in my home has components that can be found in a computer. It has a screen, a virtual keyboard, a camera, etc. However, we wouldn't classify a refrigerator to be a computer, even though it has similar components. We want to look at the functionality of what the equipment is, and the functionality is just that it's not a computer, and it's the same thing as a set-top box. The set-top box's purpose is to connect you to cable television, not to act as a computer. The second thing I wanted to address, and I think this is important to share, that all of the tax assessors in the state of Rhode Island have issues with the way the cable television providers currently report their assets to us in their required annual return form that gets submitted back to each municipality. Cable television providers refuse to report the number of set-top boxes that they currently have in our communities, and they also refuse to provide us with the cost to those boxes. And that's just not acceptable. The annual return in state law requires that every business operating in the state provide a true and accurate accounting of the personal property assets they have. And currently, the cable television providers are not meeting those requirements, and that is an issue that we take very seriously, and that we notify them just about every year that they're not meeting those requirements. Something else that we've heard, when this was brought before the House, a couple weeks ago, was that Rhode Island is kind of unique in taxing personal property equipment, and the burden that it's placed upon Cox Communications and others is unfair, and it's not like this in any other place. That's really not an apples to apples statement. If you're going to compare the local taxation, you also have to look at the state taxation, and we would have to really dig into what other fees and taxes these telecommunication companies are paying at the state level, at the local level. Every state, every area of the country, they assess and they tax things differently. Our international group that all of the tax assessors in Rhode Island belong to, the International Association of Assessing Officers, actually recommends that for personal property equipment like a set-top box or any personal property item that would generate income would be valued on an income-based approach. Instead of a cost approach, because currently we value everything on a cost approach. If you were to look at the amount of income that these set-top boxes bring in on an annual basis, that number is going to blow away whatever the cost of that box is. I can't believe that the boxes are that expensive compared to the income that they generate. One of the last things I wanted to touch and just make this clear that, what we exempt or what we, lower for someone, that obviously it's going to increase for someone else. So before you have, a bill that's going to change the classification on, cable television assets, we're going to decrease the amount of share that these companies pay in taxes. In North Providence, the hit to us is going to be about $130,000 in taxes. I know for us here at Town Hall, that's kind of a tough one to stomach when we have, businesses coming in every day telling us, hey, we're struggling with the taxes, we're struggling to pay our rent, we're struggling to pay our electricity bill. Mayor Lombardi has such a big focus on trying to keep, our taxes as low as we possibly can, while still offering, as many services as we possibly can, to the residents and business owners of, the town of North Providence. This would have such a detrimental effect to us, here in town. We're not one of the biggest towns in the state, as I'm sure many of you know. I can't imagine what the fiscal impact would be to the city of Providence, Cranston, Warwick. The amount of revenue they're going to lose on an annual basis to, essentially give, telecommunications companies a tax break. I just don't think that's the best thing to do when so many other businesses are struggling to stay afloat, to pay their taxes, and to be good citizens. So I really think that needs to be taken into consideration. We've had some discussion with representatives from Cox Communications and other groups in the telecommunications industry. We're happy to keep having those discussions and trying to work out some of the issues that they're having with taxation, and also the issues that we have with the way that they're reporting. I hope we can continue that dialogue. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide testimony against this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keane. I did have a quick question. You mentioned in your testimony, you were talking about how other states tax. Could you just review that again, reiterate that again, what you had mentioned about how Rhode Island compares with other states as far as this taxation issue?
Sure. The point I was trying to make with that is that it's very hard to make the comparison and to do, an apples to apples comparison because there's a lot of variables and there's a lot of moving parts. And where, maybe, a cable TV provider, they might not pay a local tax. They might pay more in a state tax or some other type of fee or, some other type of charge to to someone. So when they come in and they say, hey, we don't even pay a personal property tax on our set-top boxes or any of our equipment in this state, you really need to look at the full picture. You need to make sure, how much is their percentage that they're paying in taxes and other fees to state government, because that's important as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from committee members? It doesn't look like there are. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, looks like our next witness is Joel Rubinson. Welcome, Joel.
Yes.
Welcome
Hello.
to Senate Commerce. We're ready for your testimony.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, Chairman Sosnowski and members of the committee. My name is Joel Rubinson, and I represent Cox Communications. Thank you for allowing me to share my testimony on Senate Bill 280 that was introduced by Senator Pearson. We've also submitted written testimony that the clerk should have on file. The legislation before you seeks to change the tax classifications for cable television assets because Rhode Island's property tax depreciation schedules do not currently reflect changing technology in the cable industry and in Cox's network structure. For example, cable head-ins, which is the portion of the network that distributes our content to a metro area, is filled with black boxes that look and act very much like a computer server. In fact, Cox's Atlanta head-in is also one of the company's data centers, and I've been to it many times, and when you walk in there, you really can't tell the difference between which boxes are computers versus which ones serve our head-ends. Also, to meet bandwidth needs, we're constantly pushing fiber closer to customers' homes, which makes coax obsolete. Naturally, this shortens the lives of cable and the electronics that power this equipment. To stay competitive, we're required to frequently update the set-top box equipment that interfaces with our customers. Since we're living in an Alexa world, we recently modified our set-top box to make it voice-activated. Programming is moving to the cloud, which will eliminate the need for set-top boxes, and Cox's CP equipment is essentially a computer. This is supported by the exhibits that were previously submitted to y'all, which shows both pieces of equipment side by side and proves that it's virtually impossible to distinguish a set-top box from a computer. In order for Rhode Island's depreciation tables to reflect the functional lives, we believe that head-end equipment and CP equipment are computer equipment that should be moved to Class 1 and that coax should be moved to Class 2. In addition, to better match cable lives to physical lives, we also think that Rhode Island lives are excessive in relation to other U.S. states. In the Northeast, Connecticut, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, and Virginia don't tax CP equipment at all, and Massachusetts taxes the CP over 5 years, whereas Rhode Island applies a 9-year life to this equipment. Across Cox's 11-state footprint, CP is depreciated over approximately 5 years on average, and no state depreciates this equipment for more than 7 years. The tax assessors may claim that we don't include all of our CP in our property tax filings, and I just want to assure you that we report all the CP that's shown on Cox's audited financial statements to the states we operate. As a cable company, we allocate our assets to all jurisdictions across Rhode Island, since it's often difficult to tell where a piece of equipment was deployed. We do this consistently across all markets in which we operate across the country, but we're not hiding anything. Thank you once again, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Joel. Are there questions from committee members? I do not see any hands. Thank you again for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay. It looks like our next witness is Tim Wilkerson. Tim, welcome to Senate Commerce.
Thank you again, Madam Chair and esteemed members of the committee. I am Tim Wilkerson, President of the New England Cable and Telecommunications Association, or NECTA. And as a reminder, as I testified earlier, NECTA represents Cox Communications in Rhode Island, who, as Bryant University professor Dr. Tabaldi's testimony and corresponding economic study details, produces more than $500 million annually in economic impact for the state and employs approximately 800 Rhode Islanders. I appreciate the opportunity to outline our support for this pro-consumer tax equity legislation. You and your colleagues have worked tirelessly to create a hospitable environment to attract and retain jobs and grow the state's economy through a more competitive and equitable tax code. The purpose of S280 is to ensure tax policy on broadband technology is imposed similarly to surrounding states. This reform legislation will ensure that consumers are given financial relief from a burdensome and outdated tax on equipment like remote controls. Prior to 2018, specific broadband technology was not classified. 2 years ago, a law was passed that moved this property to a 9-year life. With the changes enacted in 2018, today's tax policies toward broadband equipment are expensive, have lifespans that are too long, and not reflective of the technology's useful life, and lack specificity of the technologies taxed. As a result, current property tax depreciation schedules are outdated and do not reflect ever-evolving broadband technology. By reversing this long-standing tax approach, it places an onerous burden on the basic equipment and on components spanning the industry's networks. To be clear, we are talking about taxes on remote controls and other basic broadband components. With this reclassifying of equipment, Rhode Island is an extreme outlier for taxes on technology. Rhode Island is the only state in the Cox footprint that taxes in-home equipment like modems and set-top boxes for 9 years. That policy stands in stark contrast to surrounding states like Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, which have zero tax on equipment like remote controls. Just as striking, Rhode Island's new tax is literally double the tax of any of the other 13 states where Cox operates. In a state that has worked so hard to phase out its onerous car tax, there is a law in the books taxing remote controls. Furthermore, the 9-year depreciation schedule applies to modems sitting in your constituents' homes or small businesses that will likely be swapped out every 3 to 6 years. 9 years is an incompatible tax regime for equipment being replaced no more than 6 years to support new product offerings such as embedded apps like Netflix or Amazon Prime, and to empower increasing broadband speeds. With a lifespan of 3 to 6 years, imposing 9 years of tax depreciation on modems is a flawed policy that will ultimately hurt consumers. This bill simply reverses the tax regime to the pre-2018 law, bringing tax equity to consumers' tax burden as compared to surrounding states. By doing so, Rhode Island will once again have a fair and updated tax depreciation schedule. This is a pro-consumer reform bill because, like any inequitable tax, it eventually will get passed on to the consumer. But not only will it adversely impact consumers, but it will also negatively impact internet providers' ability to invest in critical infrastructure at a time when broadband speeds and network reliability are more important than ever. In a state where tax reform resulted in pre-pandemic job growth and high-profile business expansion by multinational corporations like Infosys, Virgin Pulse, and General Electric, we ask that you further reform the tax code by passing this bill and ending this remote control tax and taxation on other equipment. Thank you. Thank you again, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you, Senator Lombardo. I will ask once again if anyone had any questions. I don't think anyone did. And we have been joined by Senator Pearson, and he would like to speak on his legislation. Welcome, Senator Pearson.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to members of the committee for allowing me to speak here this afternoon. I do appreciate it, and I apologize I was not able to be here at the beginning of the hearing. I just wanted to briefly make a couple of remarks on this legislation. A couple years ago, I actually was able to put in a bill that was brought to me by the Tax Assessors Association to clean up a series of tangible tax assessments across the board. One of the key things that was included in that sort of cleanup was the testimony that you've heard today. It was not known at the time that the impact that this particular change would have, and so we're bringing this forward to really make sure that we do understand the impact of this change and certainly understand if there have been any windfalls on either side of this, and make sure that the intended change of the cleanup is what we've achieved and not have extended a much broader classification to certain devices of a longer life than we should have. And so I look forward to reviewing all the testimony and the comments that were here today, and also a lot of the supporting material and working with you, Madam Chair, as we go forward to determine what the facts are in the situation. But I would ask if the committee's pleasure to hold this for now, and would like to return to it upon reviewing all the testimony.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senator Pearson. Are there any questions from the committee of Senator Pearson? There doesn't appear to be any. Thank you, Senator Pearson. And with that, I would entertain a motion to hold this bill for further study. Is there such a motion? We have a motion by Senator Coleman. Is there a second? Second by Senator De La Cruz and Senator Anderson. And Mr. Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Chairwoman Sosnowski.
Yes.
Senator Picard.
Yes.
Senator Mack.
Yes.
Senator Anderson.
Yes.
Senator Coleman.
Yes.
Senator Lombardo.
Yes.
Senator Mendes.
Yes.
Whip De La Cruz.
Yes.
The bill is held, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. And with that, it looks like our business has been completed for this afternoon, and I would entertain a motion for adjournment. We have a motion by Senator Coleman, seconded by Senator Anderson. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Have a pleasant afternoon. And once again, thanks to folks, the technicians at Capitol TV. And bye-bye for now.